consider this video sort of a bonus, even though it's not a very good bonus. In the description of the finale to Twilight Princess, I mentioned that I had attempted a Let's Play of Yoshi's Island, which is one of the games in my Ideas for Future LPs video that I said that I would probably try to do. The reasons that I really wanted to do it were I hadn't played Yoshi's Island in a really long time. I wanted to gain a better appreciation of the game by playing it again, see how much I really enjoy it. I wanted to try to 100% the game, which is something I'd never done before, and I feel like, well, I can do that. It's probably not as impossible as I once made it out to be, so I recorded an entire Let's Play from start to finish, but I only did 100% on about 5 worlds before I just gave up on the last one because I stopped really caring. I wasn't really enjoying the game as much as I thought that I would. I thought that the commentary really didn't work very well most of the time, and I don't know, in general I thought that this game would be sort of a fun, relaxing break from my programming woes with working on my own game, and it turned out not to be. I don't know if that was just because of my mood at the time, or whether it was because of the game itself, or whether it was just the way that I played it. It's hard to really say, but I do feel like I should sort of review the game to make up for the LP that I have now ditched, because I was just not happy with it. I want to start off by saying I think this is a really well-structured, well-put-together game for the most part, and I don't want to give off this vibe that I think it's bad, because there are lots of things that I really appreciate about it. I think that the visuals, for example, are really great. It's probably one of the best-looking games on the Super Nintendo, and it makes really great use of the 16-bit. Something like Donkey Kong Country 3 is beautiful for a different reason. It's not really all about the pixels. I think it has tons of very unique, interesting mechanics that work really well. It really was more creative than many other games on the system for its platforming. Possibly every other game on the system, really. It just pushed the boundaries of the console. Every level is rich with personality and charm, which is something that I'm sure people know I appreciate by now. And the music is excellent. I particularly love the cave music. I think it's quite pretty and mysterious. The whole system of Baby Mario getting knocked off of Yoshi's back and then floating around in a bubble while this timer goes down, and you have to make sure that you get Baby Mario back before the timer is out, I think that's a brilliant mechanic. It takes out the need for a health bar, but has something kind of similar to it that lowers the stress if you're just playing the game normally, and really amps it up if you're trying to complete it 100%. So that's a very interesting system. I think this game's highlight is actually probably the boss fights, partly because I just really like the main boss music, but also because there are 12 bosses in the game, and all of them are totally different. They're all easy, some of them are ridiculously easy, but I don't really see that as a bad thing because they're all very interesting. They all have their own personality to them, and they might look big and imposing, but that's kind of part of what makes it sort of fun. The Naval Piranha boss and the final boss in particular have freaking awesome entrances, like holy crap. So I see this game as kind of a study, because if I want to look to be inspired for platforming design, I'm probably going to look to this game because it has so many great ideas. As an actual first-hand experience, though, I don't enjoy it as much. I think the 20 red coin, 5 flower, 30 star requirement to beat every stage if you're trying to complete them is a bit much for every level. Oh, and one of the problems with trying to complete the game 100% is that most of the doors in the game are one-way doors. Once you go into them, you can't go back. And sometimes it's hard to tell which way is the way forward. So that's really irritating. And there's also one-way pipes, which makes even less sense to me. I know that Yoshi's story was made with a different design mentality in mind, where you're supposed to explore the stage and stay in it however long it takes to get enough fruit to go to the next stage, so it makes sense that you can revisit old areas, but I don't see why more 2D platformers don't do that. I think it's so obnoxious and pointless in games when levels that aren't even auto-scrollers force you to replay them just to get one thing that you missed. And in Yoshi's Island it's even worse because you have to get everything again, not just the stuff that you missed, because you have to get everything in one run. I also feel like this game is too long for its own good, because it has 48 main levels, plus 6 extra levels, which I didn't play, but still 48 is a lot. That is twice as many levels as there ever were in Yoshi's Story, which came afterwards, and that's kind of more up my alley in terms of game length. for this kind of game, because every level in that game I felt was suitably different, whereas with this very long Yoshi's Island experience, I felt like there were a lot of levels that, even though there's so many that introduced new ideas, there were a lot that repeated ideas. And I don't think that they really added anything the second time to make them more interesting. It was just kind of there again. Oh, here's the fourth level with monkeys. Okay, oh, here's the third level with fuzzies. And it's barely different every time, so kind of felt like it started getting tedious. I think the flutter kick can be really annoying sometimes, because if you get hit by an enemy as you're fluttering and then you're still holding down the button, it feels like you should be fluttering again, but then you don't, which in certain levels that really matters. Even if it mechanically makes logical sense that I wouldn't be fluttering again if I was just holding the button, it still feels wrong to me, and I think that Yoshi's Story did this better. I feel like oftentimes the challenge in the game comes from annoying enemy placement. Like sometimes there are just enemies right in your path. Sometimes there are rooms full of enemies that are shooting things at you at once, and there's just no need for that. Then there are things like those chomps that jump up and make a hole in the ground as they fall, and it just feels like they don't fall at quite the right time compared to how they're jumping up in the background. It's frustrating whenever you try to make a jump, and then the chomp falls on top of you and you die. Just very suddenly. And it also sucks whenever you're flying around in the helicopter Yoshi form, and you hit an enemy, and it seems like you should still be able to move a little bit after you get hit, but you can't. There's no way until you hit the ground again, and sometimes there is no ground and you just die. And that kind of thing annoys me. It just doesn't feel right. And there's also the matter of terrible screen loading. I mean, if you've ever played a classic Mega Man game, you'll probably know that once you kill an enemy and then you walk off the screen like 2 inches and then come back, the enemy is back. That sort of thing also happens in Yoshi's Island. Sometimes you'll scroll the screen and then try to land on a moving platform that isn't there anymore. Sometimes you might be pushing a Chomp Rock through a maze, and then you get hit, and then you have to go get Baby Mario, and then whenever you come back, the Chomp Rock is gone. So it's essential that you keep it within your sight at all times, or else you have to redo what you just did again and again and again. Or maybe you might run to the right a little bit, and then whenever you run to the left again, there's an enemy that wasn't there a second ago, but there is one now. You might could just chalk all this up to the limitations of the Super Nintendo hardware. But I still think it's irritating, and Super Mario World, to my knowledge, didn't really have that problem. Let's not forget stuff like the level where you have to ski down a mountain, which in concept is really fun, but in execution it really isn't. Then there's a level full of Goonies that drop missiles on you, and if you get hit by one, then chances are you're going to fall to your death, or you're going to miss out on Baby Mario because he's way too high up for you to reach. It's dumb to me also that the game doesn't save your life count. Every time you start up the game you have 3 lives, I think, maybe 4, something like that, instead of keeping whatever you had whenever you turned off the game last. There are easy enough means of getting lives back whenever you start up the game again, but they're all really repetitive. And I feel like the way that the game is designed, it might have benefited from not having a live system at all. Although I do appreciate that the game cuts down on some unnecessary repetition by having it save after every level. That's really nice. And I will say that it's kind of odd that this game is less open than Super Mario World when it's considered a sequel to Super Mario World. Because you have to go through all the levels in a specific order, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it seems like kind of a downgrade after Super Mario World, where so many of the levels have alternate exits and then you can take paths and skip certain levels if you really don't feel like doing them. And frankly, Yoshi's Island has a lot of levels where I would say, oh, I'll just do that one later, if I could, but I can't because it's very linear. I could go into more than that probably, but the point is that Yoshi's Island, for me personally, has too many little setbacks that keep it from being a really enjoyable experience. It feels just a little bit too tight for me, whereas something like Super Mario World or Yoshi's Story feels more loose, it feels more fun. To me, Yoshi's Island feels a little bit more like an academic display of what the programmers figured out they could do, than a game that had its heart set on every level being satisfying. While there is still a lot to love, I can't help but think the game should have been shorter with less filler in the form of barely changed repeat concepts. It should be more forgiving, especially for completionists. There should have been some more control tweaks. The off-screen object loading and unloading sucks. And there are just lots of little ways that I think the game could have been made better. So, I'm sorry that the Let's Play didn't work out, but I would like to make more Let's Play videos at some point. I just think that the hiatus that I mentioned at the end of the Twilight Princess LP is probably still a good idea. Thank you for sticking around. I really do appreciate it. Maybe someday I'll be just in the right mood to go back to another Let's Play of probably a game that I already know and love and really want to defend and talk about, because those tend to be the Let's Plays that I'm most excited about recording, so We'll see.
Yoshi!